magic in business like Disney. Join us as we hear from Disney cast members, influencers, and enthusiasts to uncover the secrets of what it takes behind the scenes to make Disney such a successful and well-loved brand. We will hear their journeys, inspirations, and have some good old-fashioned Disney fun along the way. So relax, pull up a chair, be our guest, and let's get down to Bippity Boppity Business. Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. Welcome to a very magical live stream of Bippity Boppity Business. I'm very excited to bring you a lovely guest today who I've met before, but through some different encounters on LinkedIn, just been really loving the advice and the strategy that he's bringing online and also with the businesses that he works with. And it just so happens one of his strategies is very much Disney themed, which is why we're bringing him on the show today. But before we bring him on, I just really want to give you a background idea of why we've brought on our guest. So we've brought on Mike Simmons today, and Mike, in a nutshell, basically helps businesses find clarity and make fearless decisions. And I think as an entrepreneur, finding clarity is not so magical. It's the unfun part of business. And decisions can be hard to make because they can feel very much like it's a life or death situation. And just like, it's really hard to figure out where to start, right? So Mike is here today to talk to us a little bit about himself, what he's done in the past, and this strategy, which he calls the Mary Poppins method, which is a small tool that you can use to help build your brand and find peace and clarity for your business. So without further ado, welcome, Mike.
Well, thank you for having me on. This is awesome. Now, it's going to be fun to get into the tool and kind of talk through it and just share a little bit of experience. So thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's so good to see you, Mike. So before we get into the nitty gritty, just if you don't mind for our listeners, give us a little bit of context as to, your journey as an entrepreneur in business and what it is that you do.
Yeah, I am fortunate to stand on the shoulders of giants. One of my favorite quotes is the Marie Antoinette one, which is "There's nothing new except what has been forgotten." And as we go through and we take pieces of information from folks along this journey, we can build an amazing foundation and get ourselves into a position where we can help others as they move along and feel really fulfilled in the work that we do. So my background, I was born in New York, moved to Southern California freshman year of high school. After I graduated college, I went to Arizona State University. I'm a Sun Devil, which also has a Disney connection in that the Sparky mascot was inked by a Disney, was it Imagineer or
animator persona individual?
So when I got out of ASU, my degree's in psychology. So this starts to paint a couple of, adds brushstrokes to the painting, so to speak, as you kind of build this piece out. I got into operations, never wanted to get into sales. Just had this negative perception of what sales is and the cheesy grin, used car salesman, the things that most individuals, most people hate about sales. But then you realize actually sales is an act of service. It's about problem solving at its core. It's connecting the dots between problems that are known and unknown. And then that kind of drew me into this space where I was the reluctant salesperson who got into sales. And over my career, I've had a chance to work in operations, work in customer success, work in direct sales, work in sales leadership and executive sales leadership. And I love doing the stuff that I do now, which includes things like this behind me. And my hand's wrong over on this side, but this is a problem solving framework, which the top part of the hexagon is ultimately what has become known as the Mary Poppins approach or Mary Poppins method. And it ties in on both sides. I'm Mary Poppins, y'all, from Yondu with Guardians, which is one of my favorite, I think the best trilogy It
I
exists.
love Guardians of the Galaxy. It is one of my favorite trilogies out there. And some of the music too in the background. I mean, come on, talk about the juxtaposition between really scary and then like we're gonna have 70s or music just, trolling us in the background of an epic fight scene. Like
It's phenomenal, and how it all gets tied together and the design that goes into it. And this is where I think a lot of us struggle as business owners, as entrepreneurs. We struggle with design, we struggle with clarity, we struggle with all of this stuff because there's so much we can do, but it's hard to decide, should we actually do it? And when we do stuff, does it actually work? Does the process lead to a result, an outcome that we expect? And I can't wait to dive a bit deeper into it. A little bit more background. I am a father of two kids who are now adults, and I've been married for just over 25 years to Jen. Jen and I celebrated 26 years last year.
oh, congratulations. That's so
Thank you.
sweet. Well, something that you said earlier that I think I'd like to use as a transition for this topic is
Sure.
the idea of you said a second ago, sales is an act of service. I
Mm.
think that very much aligns with some of the effective things I've even seen in Disney parks. They're very much guest focused. They're focused on providing something and not taking. It's very much a what can we do to make this a very enriching or just memorable experience, right? And I think to create a memorable experience or sell a memorable product, you have to have authenticity and connection in that and really understand who your client is so that you can actually serve them. But if you're selling just to make money, yes, that's nice. But at the end of the day, I've seen entrepreneurs fizzle out because of that. This is a hard thing to do. You have to have a servant mindset in order to have a successful business. And I would love to know at what point in your career did you kind of have, that shift, and what was it like to grow into that? Because it's not an easy mindset to just pick up and learn.
Yeah, it was a modeling. Like, I saw what good sales is, good behavior is. It was back when I worked at a company called SmartForce, which is an early stage ed tech company back then, back in 2000s. I was an account consultant, learning manager, what today people would call customer success. And my role was helping the business implement our software effectively to drive business outcomes. And we do that across a large number of companies. The Walt Disney Company was actually one of my clients way back when, after I had kind of grown up in my career and started doing some of the strategic account stuff. But the what happened is you started to see what really good behavior is at an account executive level. The people who were part of my team, when I saw account executives or the people that were part of the team that I was a part of, would see them work with customers. And the thing that was very different was it was not about pitching a solution. It was about uncovering need, uncovering a challenge, shining the light in a specific area, being a bit of a guide where people start to say, okay, yep, that is a problem that I need to solve, but and the problem sometimes is a little bit different than what I expect it is. Like, I think the problem is um, employee retention. Well, okay, so what does that mean? Well, it means that I'm not keeping enough employees inside my business. People are leaving inside the business. People are going. Well, all right, so that might be the result of the problem. But what if we go deeper and we start to get into the why piece? Like, why does that problem persist? We might find that actually it's not, you don't have an employee retention problem, even though that's the thing. You've actually got a culture challenge inside your business that's driving the employee retention challenge. And we need to start with that piece first. So you start to engage with others and realize, hey, you know what? Sales is actually about problem solving. It's about
It's so much
connecting the dots.
psychology too, which I love your background in that, right? Like it's there so much of it is just like the human brain and how we think and feel and relate to things. So I love that a lot. Well, let's
It's
get into it. Let's
Yeah.
get into the strategy because I'm dying to
Okay.
know. So I'm going to give you the stage and I'm going to have you start walk us through the umbrella and then if let's pretend this is a B2B tech kind of brand is has as an example or whatever has come to you and they're like, yeah, what do we do? Like, let's use it as an
Can I,
example.
can I, do you mind if I shift things a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Go
Yeah,
ahead. Go
so
ahead.
so let's think about what's a specific problem that you're looking to solve for in your business right now.
Okay.
Either on behalf of your business
Hmm.
specifically, like inside, or ways that you work with customers. What's choose either problem, but let's identify a specific problem that we want to solve. Give
A
me
specific problem
yeah,
in my business. Well, let me think. So, um, there are a a few offerings that I have right
okay.
now
Yep.
within my business. There's the agency side,
Okay.
which is the done for you podcast production. And then there's this kind of floating education coaching side that hasn't really fully been fleshed out.
Okay.
There's glimmers of it, and it's looking interesting or promising, but I don't know. The problem is it the same audience as my done for you agency, or are they a different audience? And if so, I don't know who the heck those people are yet because there's so many options. So I think that's a good example.
Awesome example. So if I hear things right,
Yes.
there's a one of the challenges that you solve for inside for the world is,
Right.
hey, how do you create interesting content that
Mhm.
can be delivered to the
Mhm.
masses, collect people into a area because they're
Mhm.
interested in it, and then from there they will take action relative to the brand that you're supporting. And you do this for entrepreneurs, you do this for founders, you do this for business owners.
Yes.
Now there are some who fall into a category of, I think this is really cool. I want to hire out someone to do this and I'm going to
Mhm.
outsource all of it. But there are
Right.
others who probably fall into this category of, I want to do it, I'm interested in it, but I'd like to control that myself. I'd like to lead it. I'd like to minimize the risk that I have
Mhm.
so that I can go out there and do this thing, at least test doing this thing on
Mhm.
my own. And there could be a number of reasons why they want to test. But is that fair? Is that there's two categories. This category of, hey, I want to work with you and I want you to do it for me. And this other
Mhm.
category of, I want to learn everything from you so that I can do it myself.
Yes, and the second part of the ones that wanna do it, they wanna do it themselves, they often are in early stages and don't quite have the funding for a investment of a production team. So, I wanted to, because this is my passion, I wanted to offer an alternative to those who don't have the, corporate funding for a production team, but still wanna learn how to do it themselves, or maybe train someone on their team to help them like part-time do it or whatever. So yeah, that would
Awesome.
be yeah.
Perfect. So we've got this challenge where, and we'll say, just, to, it's podcast for the business for self. And I'm not in a position where I can fund this thing,
Right.
this thing. So, all right. Now, on this side of this hexagon, let's think about who are the people. So who are the people who have this problem?
So typically who I have served are B2B uh founders or VPs of marketing, folks who are very service-based businesses. They provide a service, and they are busy and they don't have time to make their own content, and they're a little overwhelmed on that side. So because they're focused on delivering a great service to their clients. So I don't know if that's a good answer or not,
Well,
but I
it's
mean,
here's the cool part about it. There's never there's not good answers or bad answers.
yeah,
There's answers, and once we get the information up on the board,
we'll
then
get
we've actually have perspective. We
right.
turn it into something, and then we can move to a point where we start taking action. And
Okay.
I think this is where one of the challenges that exist out there is, we as founders, we as entrepreneurs
Mhm.
struggle with taking that next step. We struggle
Mhm.
with identifying the step and then taking it. And then the next thing we struggle with is determining, did we take the right step?
Mhm.
How do we assess, did we actually make progress toward it? And then the other challenge is, what happens if we're just taking a lot of steps but we're only going in circles? So we're
Right.
taking a lot of steps, working really hard. So there's no wrong answers. There's no
Mhm.
good answers or bad answers. It's more of, hey, this is what is and this is what perspective is. And that's
Right.
what we're trying to do, is avoid some of these blind spots. So okay, so B2B founders, VPs of marketing,
Mhm.
typically service based, they have the problem. Who's impacted by them not being able to get their message out?
Well, definitely, sales, or social media team members, there's a just constant struggle between like, okay, well, what are we gonna post? Or like, it seems like it's a barrier to doing other things because organic content and posting it and figuring out where it's gonna go or whatever, there's a lot of platforms and it can get very like stressful. So I think if I were to put my brain in that position, it would be also affecting definitely the founders. Like if they want to do personal branding, it would affect their abilities to brand themselves or really personify the brand. I think
So,
maybe
and what we're doing is we're going through and we're saying, hey, are there other people that are involved in this
right.
who either are impacted? That next one,
Hmm.
we had who has it, who's impacted by it. And the third question is who cares about those people? Like who cares
Interesting.
about those founders? One of the other people that are impacted are customers,
Oh,
because
true.
think about the customer that's out there that is struggling with the problem that that founder potentially solves for, that entrepreneur solves
Hmm.
for, but now doesn't know that they exist because their message is not getting out there. So
True.
the people who have it are some folks inside the business. The people who are impacted are some folks in the business and some folks outside of the business. And then the people who care about them are the people in their partners, their
Mm-hmm.
others inside their network. Their existing customers care
Mm-hmm.
because if they can't solve for this challenge and help others solve for that challenge, then they might be out of business and they're not going to be able to support them on that side. So the
Interesting.
exercise is really identifying let's get clarity on the definition of the problem, who has it, who's impacted, who cares, and then we get to move to the other side of this hexagon and get into why. So why
Getting
does
into
the
why.
problem persist? Why
Hmm.
does the inability to get or content out into the marketplace that starts bringing in organic traffic, why
Mm-hmm.
does that problem persist?
Mm-hmm. So I've thought about this a little bit, and the word sustainable content creation comes to mind. And the reason why I say I've been thinking about it like that is there are many channels, and if you assess what to make for what channel in the traditional sense, like one day you post on Instagram a reel, and then another day you're posting like a long message on LinkedIn or whatever, it can feel overwhelming to decide on each of these individual platforms, like how do we plan and it not take so much of our time and energy to do it. So um that's why I feel a problem exists. And I feel that
Sorry,
podcast
let
sorry,
me
go ahead.
Rita, let me just clarify. Um,
Yes,
persist. Why does it continue to happen?
I
Not
that's a
why
good
does it
question.
exist? More of like, why does it? Why? Why is it out there? Why are people not solving it?
Mhm.
Why is it still a challenge? Is there a knowledge challenge? Is there maybe a heavy lift challenge? Maybe it's people
Mm,
think it's much harder to solve for it than it really is. Um,
right.
like the tech has gotten so good that the microphone on my iPhone
Yes.
is really good at isolating for noise. I've got it like these. I'm a technical geek,
I
so
love tech stuff too. I feel
I've
you
got
on
these
that. There's
I've got
yeah.
these DJI lav mics that are
Yes.
unbelievable,
Yes.
and I'm not using it right now because we're going off of the ATR.
Right.
But like these are sometimes people think it's a really heavy lift, and this is
Mhm.
a couple $100 investment
Right.
to create really good audio content that is not as difficult to edit because
Right.
it's clean coming out of the
Right.
source. So the as we kind of move through this, it's the first part of this why is why does it persist?
Okay.
Why does it persist? Is it a lack of knowledge? Are there some preconceived notions? Is there some view that hey, I'm not really good at like before I launched the podcast, I hated my voice. I have
Yes.
heard my voice so many times now that I've just come to like it. Like
Yes.
there was a period of time where I never wanted to hear myself on a recording,
Mhm.
and now it sounds the same as as it does on in my head when
Right.
I hear it on the recording. It doesn't. There's no difference because I've heard it so many times at so many different speeds, and and pre-editing, post-editing, all of that kind of stuff. So like there's all of these kind of preconceived notions that exist on the client side that
Right.
might keep this thing out there.
I
Could be
also
lack of
think
knowledge. Go ahead.
I
Yeah.
think there's definitely a lack of knowledge, but I also think a huge part of why the problem persists is that there like every week it feels like something changes or there's a new platform to post or there's a new way to post or there's a new trend to follow and it can feel like, oh, I have to just keep up with the trends. That's part of the sustainable part. And also with every new AI tool and fun thing that comes out to help you, you almost feel worse about the fact that you're not creating as much content because you've bought all the subscriptions and you've done all the things, but there's a lack of direction and how to effectively use those tools so that the content actually gets results for your business. Because I guess part of why the problem persists is there is all these tools and we post and we do whatever we can, but we're not really getting leads from what we're doing. We're losing the relationship aspect of the content that we're creating by hopping on that train. It's in my opinion. So
Yep.
um I guess it would be lack of knowledge and just trends that and platforms that seem to quickly come and go like every week.
So it's pretty awesome, right? So like there's all of these things when we go through an exercise like this where we start to gain additional perspective. We start to think a
Yeah.
little bit differently about why does the problem persist? What's the root? And you can get into like 5 why discussion here. So doing a root
Mhm.
cause analysis and um, an example of 5 whys if you've not either had a 2-year-old around your house who keeps asking why, or you've not gone through some of the Toyota Way stuff. It's you're going through and you're saying, okay, I got a speeding ticket. Well, why did I get a speeding ticket? I was
Mhm.
driving too fast. Why was I driving too fast? I left the house. I was late to a meeting. Why was I late to the meeting? I left the house too late. Why did I leave the house too late? I got distracted by something inside the environment. So it's not necessarily that I need to slow down. It's I need to, if I go back to the beginning and remove some of those obstacles, maybe I get out a little bit earlier and I'm not compelled to deal with the environment that got me into a situation where I had to drive fast. The next question
Yeah.
that we want to get into, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was thinking too, I don't know if this is towards the top, but everyone always starts with time. I don't have time. No
Yeah,
matter
sure.
if you have the tools or the resources, just say time. So I don't know if that's like up there at the top or this the next one that you're going to talk about with
Yeah.
me.
So and again, there's no wrong answers. It's more about putting
Yeah.
information on the board because when
Yeah.
we document it, when we write it down and we can see it in this see it in this
Mhm.
kind of environment, and I'm getting so excited, I'm losing my microphone. Again, I'll try to stay close to it, but there we get ourselves into a situation where we're if we have it on the board, we start to gain clarity. We
Right.
put these brush strokes up on the painting, and the painting starts to become clear to us. If we don't
Mhm.
put the brush strokes on the painting and we just keep them bouncing around inside our head, how are we ever going to catch up? How does the picture become
I know.
clear? We might find
That's how
out
I
that we're
feel all the time.
yeah, right. So this is one of those, this is a tool that helps us kind of pull things together because the typical
Okay.
mistake that happens is people go right from what into what? What do they do? What do they want? Once they know a problem, what's the next thing they want to do?
They go sell it and they
They
don't
want to
think
go
about anything
solve
else.
it, right? They just want to
Yeah.
jump right into solution. Hey,
Right.
I got a live one. I have a problem. I know that I can help solve this. So I go right into
Yes.
solution. We've not earned the right to it. So let's do
Right.
one more why. And the
Okay.
why is it important to solve? What's the actual
Mm.
impact of solving this problem? What changes for your customers by being able to solve for this specific problem? Solve for creating solid organic content in a audio format, maybe some
Mhm.
video that can be
Yeah.
transcribed and then repurposed, which helps drive this sustainability piece, meaning we're not wasting a lot of stuff. We're able to reuse it in a couple of different ways. What's the
Mhm.
business impact of solving this problem, for yourself or for
It gives
customers? Is an example, yeah.
I think it allows the team to focus more on the actual relationships that are being formed within those content collaborations, because the differentiator personally that I feel between video or audio podcasting to a traditional post for your brand on behalf of your brand is you have the
Yeah.
opportunity to build partnerships with others. But what happens is when we are so focused on just getting the stuff out, or there's not really a cohesive plan for it, we're missing the opportunity to foster the relationship after the recording is done, or whatever, right? So I think enough to answer your question is, once we can get over the why of posting and it's just there, we can actually focus on what matters and kind of feel relieved and go to the next level of building the brand instead of just wondering, oh my god, what am I going to post today?
Right. Yeah. So you get focus is big, right? Then is with that focus, you get to do the important things. You get to focus time, energy,
Right.
and attention on the important things. Ultimately,
Mhm.
that should turn to what? Money,
Hopefully
time.
money, hopefully ROI on your investment, like, for example, I always say, if you are really producing a high quality podcast that's you have video and you want to do all the things and you do it for yourself, you could do it, but that could be up to 10 to 12 hours a week. And what would you be able to do with that 10 to 12 hours a week if you instead were spending 1 or 2 hours a week just doing a bunch of recordings and then those are sales calls that you could have
Yeah.
open time for, or whatever. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
I
I mean,
think
and
that's it.
the other thing that it does for me, and the thing that the podcast does for me, is when someone
Yeah.
wants to pick my brain, or someone wants to,
Right.
talk through a couple of different things, or just get perspective on whatever. The question I ask or usually my response is awesome, thank you. And
Yes.
what are your questions? Like what is it that
Mm.
you want to go a little bit deeper on? What are you struggling with? Like, what's the thing?
Mhm.
Because I can point them to an episode where we talk about that thing. And if
Mm.
they're my ideal customer, I likely won't, I'll likely have content that's already been created in the context of either leadership, culture, revenue, or execution. Leadership, culture, revenue, execution. There's going to be, you won't stump me. I can point you to an
Right.
episode. And the
Right.
cool thing about it is when I point them to that episode, this evergreen content,
Right.
now they go and they can listen to it, and then they can either come back and ask a question in context, or if they're like 90% of the world, they won't listen to it.
You reminded me of something else why I keep using the word sustainable content. It's because a lot of these reels and trends are very passive. So you could post a reel today and a few weeks it could either make sense to somebody and they find it funny still, or informative, but maybe it just kind of sifts away into the world of content. Whereas evergreen content, like you're talking about with your podcast, it feels more valuable to invest in, because we're not investing in something that 2 years from now somebody may not find. With podcasts, you're right, somebody could find an episode 2 years later and still get the same value out of listening from the episode as if they had waited for it to come out the day of the release of the episode. So yeah, that's a good point.
And for me as a business owner, what this
Hmm.
does is it makes sure that, like, if I ask somebody what they're struggling with, and then I send
Hmm.
them content that is in context related to what they're struggling with, and they don't come back with another question, I've done one of two things. I've either helped them solve it and now they're moving forward,
Hmm.
or I've avoided having a conversation with someone who is just going to talk with me and never was going to do the work anyway. They were looking for the
Right.
easy button. They were looking for whatever. So it becomes a force multiplier for me. It allows me to 10x the impact, if that's another
Hmm.
way that you want to look at it. So, all right. So what we've done is we've applied the Mary Poppins approach to problem solving
Love it.
before getting into things like how. And typically,
Interesting.
we get so excited about the problem that we're solving for in the marketplace that we want to go right from you've got a problem to I've got a solution. And now I'm going to
Hmm.
sell you that solution. I would challenge you to take the time to breathe detach, step back, answer some of these questions, identify where your potential blind spots and perspective are so that you can then earn the right to move into how. If you can't
Mm.
answer those 3 questions at the top of the umbrella, I'm Mary Poppins, y'all. Like, if you can't answer those questions, you've not earned the right to start to get into how. You might be solving for a symptom like that. You might, in the car example, well, don't push the pedal down so heavily, and you won't drive so fast or whatever. But
Mm.
that's not super useful. That's training on not doing a behavior. But when the
Right.
stimulus for the behavior comes back into place, they're still gonna push the pedal, and they're still gonna kind
Mhm.
of move through. And what if we actually could solve for it earlier on? So that's the whole background behind this. It started as an account planning tool when working with um, large distributed revenue teams inside organizations where we needed to build scale both at a strategic account management perspective and an early small to mid-sized market account executive perspective. How could we
Mhm.
come up with a common approach to account planning? And then I've now repurposed it as a problem solving tool to help gain clarity, shift perspective, help us earn the right to move into the bottom part, which is more of the how. So how are they doing it today? How might we do it differently in the future? When do they need to solve by? Let's identify and reveal urgency. And then what are our short term, medium term, and long term next steps? 30, 60, 90. And that's how you kind of make out and build out the rest of the model. What do you think?
I think this is very helpful and also an accessible way to understand this concept
Yeah.
because I think there's many ways to consume it or to teach it that can feel just as overwhelming, So but this is very important because it also helps me visually see like what I have down pat, what I could continue to think about,
Yeah.
but also I think it's even more important now than ever because there are many folks who do what I do now. So trying to understand, am I really that different? I don't know. Is there a Mary Poppins magic sauce to what I do? I don't. This is the things that you start to think about that hopefully when you do, lead to the flying away to the bank moment with the with the umbrella. Like, whoa, we did it. So I love it so far, but I'm interested. This is interesting to me. So we went through the why, we went through the what, we went through the who, but you're right. We haven't gotten to the problem, and
Yeah.
I'm so used to thinking about that first. So it's
So
interesting.
so then we move into kind of to fill out the rest of it. We go
Yeah.
through and we say, okay, how? Well, how are they solving for it today
Yes.
versus how would they solve for it in the future? So those are two different questions, two different perspectives. The reason why it's super important to go through this, how are they solving today, is sometimes people have problems that persist that they're not doing any work to solve for. And the reason they're not doing any work is because they don't care.
Right.
They don't give a crap. Like,
Yeah.
and if we're going to sit there and we're going to try to help people solve for problems that they don't care about, we're wasting our time.
Right.
Now, if it's not that they don't care, maybe it's that it's not prioritized, or
Mm.
maybe they don't know that there's a solution. There's a lack of knowledge. There could be so many reasons why the how box, when talking to clients and prospects or working with prospects and clients, why that how box is empty. But we, as problem solvers, as solution providers, as people, entrepreneurs who think
Right.
differently so that we can do differently, we want to change the world. We will tend to go right into how we solve it.
Mm.
Pause, take a breath, ask them, how are they solving it today? Reflect on that and kind of get some context from them around how they're thinking about how they're working through how they are investing today. Because if you're working with someone who's not investing in it today, they might never invest in it tomorrow, and you might end up wasting a lot of time. This bottom piece. So we went one, what problem? Two, who has it, who's impacted, who cares about
Right.
those people? Three, why? Why does it persist? Why is it important to solve? Four, how are they solving it today? And then the next one, then you get to get into your exciting stuff, which is, hey, how are we different? How will we solve it? How will we help them do things differently so that they avoid failure and achieve the results that they're looking for? So that's this next piece. Number 4 is how, and we want to know both perspectives. How are they solving today? How might we solve differently? And if we're missing on any of those, then we're going to have some challenges. We'll have some confusion. If we move over to any questions on that?
No, that's really great. I love that. Let's keep going.
So then we move across and we add in our next line, which is when. When do they need to solve it by?
Okay.
So why'd you go, when
I never thought of when.
Why not?
I don't know. I just think I'm just so in the now. I'm like, you need it now. Me as a person, I'm like, I think you need this now. I've never considered at what point in their process when they're thinking about when we need this by. So that's a very good question.
Yeah. So, and we go through this one thing, because on our side, we're super stoked about all of this stuff. Like,
I'm like, you need it now. You need podcast yesterday, I'm like, no, wait, let me slow down and understand the perspective here.
We get so excited about it because we're passionate about what we want to help people solve for, right? So when we get into this, when do you need to solve this thing? What's the compelling event that's taking place inside your business that is going to make it can be a catalyst for change? Because if we don't have a when, then it's just going to sit out there. It's just going to kind of float. Now we get a better understanding of the persist piece. It's not that important. It gets pushed out. It's not getting prioritized. It might be maybe everybody's procrastinating, like whatever. Let's get into this when, the timing on when something needs to be solved by. When would it be ideal? So imagine a world where if you're solving for this, 6 months from now. So imagine a world 6 months from now where you've got it would be 26 weeks of content.
Right.
Broken up across my 4 pillars: leadership, culture, revenue, execution, as an example. What would happen if over a 6-month period, we could create this content, and how would things be different 6 months from now if when people come in with questions, you're able to point them to that direction? Or if people have questions and they search on YouTube or Google or wherever it is that they're searching, Instagram, algorithms everybody's listening to them. You get, hopped up with a book or a couple of like little bourbon things, like all of these things, like all of this stuff. What's the when kind of thing from their perspective on when they need to solve by? Now,
so I also thought really quick, just to interrupt, just a question, because I also understood it as, when are they ready to buy? Like, at what point in their process would they be like most like likely to want to interact with that service, like the best timing for that? Because for example, if somebody doesn't even have a logo yet for their own business, but they still want a podcast, like that would be really great timing for the when of enacting this or whatever.
Well, that's the cool part about this question, right? So when is a time thing, and when is based on the person on the other end, the things that they're prioritizing. If you are selling HR related things around like benefit planning, you don't want to be selling that in October. And the reason you don't want to be selling that in October is because a lot of times open enrollment is happening inside October in a traditional fiscal year. If you think about the Walt Disney Company's fiscal year ends in September, begins in October. You do not want to be having a conversation with the Walt Disney Company in October about the thing that they're going to buy this fiscal year, because they've already allocated all of those resources. You want to have that conversation back in April, April, May, when they're starting to think about, hey, what are we going to do differently next year? Where do we want to invest time, energy, and resources? So the when question is more, again, getting that piece out of your customer around when would they like to solve the problem? When do they need to solve the problem? Sometimes you'll find out that the when was, I wish I would have solved it yesterday. Think about plumbing inside your house. Like So we just replaced 3 air conditioning units inside our house. We live in Arizona, and we've got a house that requires that kind of capacity. That is a very expensive thing to do, but I
Right.
would much rather solve for it 2 weeks ago than solve for it in July when it's really, really hot outside. So this one question is not when do we think they need to solve it, when do they think they need to solve it, and what are some of the questions that we can use to reveal it? Um, do you think a sales rep can create urgency, or a solution provider can create urgency?
Yes.
Why do you think that? Because I'm going to push back.
Hmm. Well, now you have me second guessing because you said I'm gonna
No,
push.
it's like there's no wrong answers. Like,
No, I know, no, but it's okay. So the reason why I think they can create urgency, is if they do it in a way that's like timely, though. So it's
yeah,
not like I can't I can't force you to buy something if you don't really want to, but
right.
I can understand when you've come to me. If they've come to me, I
Yeah.
feel like I can create urgency. But
Okay.
if I am cold prospecting, I do
Yeah.
not feel that I can create that sense of urgency. So
Yeah. Has a sales rep that you've worked with ever created urgency for you?
yeah, but you know what? The way they did it, I wasn't vibing with it.
Yeah, it's
You can
super
tell.
hard, super hard to vibe with it, right? So
Yeah.
now there's one person in my life who creates urgency. Typically, she is sitting at a desk 20 feet that way, and we've been married for 26 years. Like, it's not,
You can only
but
deal with one.
that's it, right? So, but what you can do as a business leader,
Right.
leader of teams, leader of self, leader of organizations, as a business leader, what we can actually do is we can reveal urgency in the questions that we ask.
Okay.
Right. So, and that's the kind of head twist that we want to see on the other side. We want to see that nonverbal around, like, hey, what would happen if X, or what would happen if Y, or what would happen if Z, or
Mhm.
when, like, I'll give a good example inside our household. We've got our youngest is getting ready to graduate high school. Really is in a 3-week period between now and when he graduates high school. In the next 3 months, he's going to be swimming at the University of Hawaii. He's going to
Wow.
leave the house. We are going to empty nest. There's a high level of urgency that's going on inside the house relative to getting things in place to be able to support that. That
Right.
was not created by a rep. That was created by the operating environment that we're in and that perspective
Mm.
that we're in. So, what I would challenge you as a business owner, any business owner that's out there, is think of ways that you can reveal urgency, not create urgency. And we can do that with the questions like, when do you need to solve this by? When would you like to have solved it by? The plumbing thing, as an example. When do you need a plumber?
Mm.
Water and everything is all over the place. When would you have liked to have had? When would you have wanted to have that plumber come in? Just before all of that happened. Like, if they could have helped reveal the challenge that was happening there. So when we start solving for problems, let's think about each of these contexts: what, who, why, how, when, and then the most important part, even though they're all the same shape and size, and
Right.
no question is really more important than the other. They all, if we don't answer the questions, then we're taking on risk inside the model. But here's the thing that I think a lot of people miss is, let's define next logical steps so that we can start taking them. So this gets into project management: 30, 60, 90, short term, medium term, long term. This is where we can lay out a plan for our customers to help guide them to success and avoid failure. You can lean on a lot of the Donald Miller hero journey type stuff, building a story brand there. If you've not read that book, it's a very good book, very interesting book around how you can align with the problems that the customer has, the villain that they're dealing with, and you can guide them throughout that problem as they work to overcome the challenge.
Mm.
So 30, 60, 90, short term, medium term, long term. We hit on all 6 sides of the hexagon. What do you think?
I think that these questions is the ones that I have not really thought of a lot are um the I guess like you said, like when your toddler has asked you why a million times, like
Yeah.
I think I very much have thought of the surface level of these, but not gone further. Like the other layer to these questions is very important. And I like it a lot. It Also, the 30, 60, 90 aspect, I haven't very well implemented. I've loosely implemented in the business, but I have noticed that when I have laid out like a plan and stuck to it, it does help to retain too. Because the other part of this is retaining. You've done all the work around the umbrella, and now you actually want to retain after the sale to continue on. Because those are the few days where you really kind of are sussing out whether that is it's going to stick. That business relationship is going to stick, right?
Yeah, you have to execute. Like
Right.
literally, that's what it is. You have to execute. You have to do the work,
Mm-hmm.
and whether you do the work or you're guiding them to do the work, someone has to do the work. All
Right.
of this other stuff is just fluff. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's we've got a bunch of information that we put up on a board. We feel really comfortable. Everybody feels safe. We've got clarity. All of that other kind of stuff. What do we need to do?
Mm,
Short term, medium term, long term. 3 minutes, 6 minutes, 9 minutes. 3 seconds, 6 seconds, 9 seconds. 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. 30, 60, 90. Short term, medium term, long term. And the reason why it's important to lay out all three of those is because if I know where I'm going long term and I know where I am and I know where I have some ideas around where I want to be in the middle, then I can actually build out a plan and evaluate the plan to determine, am I actually making progress toward the objective that I was working on? And that's
right.
where the short term, medium term, long term piece comes into play. You think about most founders want to, and most customers want to move from A to Z really quick. They're like,
Right.
I want to get from, oh crap, I know I have a problem, to I've solved it and I'm really excited about it and I'm telling the world about it. We'd
Right.
love to get them there quickly. It's hard to get from A to Z. It's so much easier, simpler if we are really clear around what B, C, and
Mm,
D are, so that we
right.
can make progress to B, make progress to C. Then evaluate, step back and say, are we actually moving toward the right goal or not? Do we want to adjust our plan? Do we need to make shifts? But the whole point behind this model, and this is the most complex model I share in the marketplace, it has 6 sides to it. It has 6 questions. it We add complexity by adding variables to things. We reduce complexity by removing them. There's a couple of other models that are a little bit simpler, like simplifying communication and
Right.
simplifying decision making and that kind of stuff. But this one is the most complex one because of the questions that we're asking, the information that we're putting out there. And the key piece down here is that 30, 60, 90. As I look at this, if at any point in time I've not taken the time to either understand when or who, now I have a dotted line in this shape.
Mm.
That shape can no longer hold water. I
Well,
have blind
I'm
spots, and now I'm taking on risk. So,
right. And my other question too is
yeah,
just out of curiosity, in your
sure.
opinion, how narrowed down should the who be? Because there are those who believe, okay, we've narrowed out all these things. Now we're going to go back to the who and pick one type of person, one type of vertical. Or there are those that believe as long as you have the other facets to this
Yeah.
and you have a general idea of who your one, two, or three who's are, then it's fine. So I'm curious to know what your opinion is on it.
Yeah, so I've got another model which is around identifying your ideal customer profile. It's territory
Mm-hmm.
planning. It's making decisions around who it is that we work with at an individual level and an organization level. And it's all about making decisions, deciding to cut off a certain segment of the market so that we
Right.
can focus on the people where we can make the biggest impact. I think that level of clarity is very important. The real answer though on this is it depends. It depends on
Right.
what you're trying to solve for. What's the purpose of the thing that we're working through? Like someone would say, I'm not going to go through. Actually, I'll say it out loud. If you're in a situation and someone is bleeding out, don't go through. Well, what's the problem? Who has it? Who's impacted? Who cares
Mhm.
about? Like, jump right into solving the problem now. Let's stop the bleeding. Get a tourniquet on there, eliminate the challenge, and then we can go back through and work through the problem solving framework around, like, what do we do next and where do we
Mhm.
go? So unfortunately, Rita, it depends.
It depends.
Depends on the scope, and that's why a lot of the stuff is so, I think, interesting and exciting to work on. The more
Mhm.
narrow you can get, the better. There was a time where I firmly believe that I can help people who want do the things they want to do better and faster. And I can do that through systems and process. Not everybody's prepared to do the work. So the next thing, after talking to a guy named Corey Kosick, I've added in who want to help themselves. So they've got to be ready to do the work. Now, then that's broad. That could be everybody. I'm not for everybody. So I'm for the people who, the reason why they're struggling is because they don't have systems and process. The systems and process stuff doesn't come naturally. They look at this and they think, holy crap, that looks like a lot of math and science behind
Yeah.
there. And it's confusing. But when we built it, it felt approachable, right? Like
It did.
it was accessible, right? So not everybody is going to fall into that category. So when it started Catalyst, the focus was technical founders who struggled with sales because they didn't have systems and process when it comes to sales. Now, what we've done with what we're doing with the Phoenix Club, we've kind of expanded out to preneurs, those people who want to think differently and do differently. They could be an entrepreneur, business owner who's adding a team and wants to sell their business at some point. They could be a solopreneur, want to build on their own. They could be an entrepreneur. They want to do it inside an organization with the backing of a company. Or they could be, like I was way back when, a wantrepreneur, which was, hey, I want to do this, but I don't even know where to start. So I ended up working through the entrepreneur side of things, the entrepreneur side of things, the solopreneur side of things. And you kind of start to figure out, hey, what's my right fit? But this is, so it depends. It's really hard. You take time to assess your data, assess the work, assess the feedback, see where the impact is, and then focus time, energy, and attention on the things that work and be comfortable firing the things that don't. And that's a super hard thing to do. It's really hard to fire work that doesn't work.
Right.
And I mean, I've got some models around that. So I'm a model guy. I'm a people and process guy. Systems
Well,
and
and then I'm so glad that you brought it up because it is a great resource just for anyone who's listening that wants to maybe dive deeper and have that one-on-one time because it can be hard to let go of once you it's exciting to find the right fit, find the right who, but it's equally as scary or maybe like sad to let go of some of the things that you thought you wanted to do and have those difficult conversations without also affecting your bottom line at the end of the day too. So I think it's interesting though that you said preneur and how you broke down like that's kind of what you landed on. I wonder if do you agree or disagree with this or somewhere in between? Could your who be either a vertical, like a specific niche, like for example, I only work with doctors or I only work with yoga instructors or whatever. That's one way. But could another way be I only work with people that have XYZ core values or an XYZ this stage of their life? Is that equally like if that were something that you wanted to do and focus, is that another way to kind of go about the who of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Like one of the things that we're thinking about is we're working through it, and I mean, this is always a learning process,
Right.
and I apply the tools and processes that I implement inside organizations to myself and to our business. And part
You're
of
a
it drives,
practitioner.
well, part of it drives my wife crazy because she's like, well, you're treating me like a client. And but that's the reality. Like, this is how my brain works. I want to go deep before we get into the solution piece. So on the who, one of the things that we're kind of playing around with is, the people who are out there who are thinking about what's next. Like they're not, they've done this thing for a period of time. Like Jen has gone through, I've raised 2 kids. Those 2 kids have now left the house. What's next? My identity is tied to being a mom, being on the booster club, being involved in PTO, being involved in all of these things. And now those humans are leaving the house. Like, what's next? So there are a number of us that are out there struggling with what's next. It could be what's next because I'm not feeling fulfilled in the role that I'm working on. It could be what's next because something's changed inside my environment. Well, how do we help people who are thinking about what's next work through that challenge in the context of process, tools, and systems? So we're trying to figure it out. I'm trying to figure it out. Ultimately, what drives me is impact. I want to make an impact. I want to help people think differently so that they do differently and see those results and start to feel more fulfilled personally in the work that they're doing. And we do this in the context of so Phoenix Club, business, how we make money, family, the people that are important to us, and self, us as individuals, because we have to work as individuals to get really good at this stuff. So yes, I think there's so many different ways that you can segment the market out. The key challenge on this side of this hexagon, the who, remember as you're going through it, There's someone who has the problem. There's someone who's impacted by that person having the problem. And there's someone who cares about the people who impact and have the problem. In B2C, a lot of times it could, the person who has it as impacting cares could all be the same person. Other than like, think about driving in a car and we need to stop for food. Well, who has the problem? Well, the person who's hungry has the problem. The person who's impacted is everybody who's in the car. Who cares about it? The people who are in the car having to deal with all of this kind of stuff. So, and it's just those three questions which start to shift perspective. I don't know. Is that helpful?
It is very helpful, and I really do enjoy it. I think it'll be something that I look back to and journal on as well. I like the visual aspect of it. I think like what you said, when you put pen to paper or whiteboard to marker to whiteboard, it really helps really think through it. And I also think that it's just as affirming to know that every business at one point or another may go through different shifts of this. Like maybe for one season, your umbrella is pink and you've gone through all these things and you're like, this is my umbrella. But then 2 years later, okay, we wore that umbrella out. We have to pivot and reassess who this is. So I think a misconception for some folks, or maybe not misconception, we can feel a little down on ourselves, is when suddenly the umbrella that we picked for ourselves isn't necessarily working anymore. And now we have to refigure out, like you said, the what's next. So I do think it's helpful and it's very impactful for hopefully someone who's trying to figure that out, and maybe will get some clarity by going through this process. I sure have a lot more to think about too myself. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you. There are no shortage of problems that are out there.
Yes.
And, what will end up happening is you'll find yourself walking around, you'll see these hexagons, you'll be like, why is that Mike Simmons dude in my head talking about problem solving? Like we were down at Epcot a couple of weeks ago for an event in the and when you're in the Guardians of the Galaxy queue, you look up in the ceiling, it's a bunch of hexagons connected.
It's hexagons, yeah.
And I joked, I said, everywhere I look, there's problems to be. I see problem solving. So
everywhere I look, there it is. It's right there. Yeah, that's so cool. Now I'm gonna, when I go to that ride at Epcot, which by the way if you guys haven't done the ride, what are you doing? Get there. It's such a fun ride. But now when I go, I'm gonna think of you. I'm gonna look up there and be like, all right, I'm in queue. Let me do some business brainstorming while I'm waiting to get on the ride.
Perfect.
I love it. Well, Mike, thank you so much for hopping on and doing this exercise with me and taking the time and resources to do that. If anyone wants to connect with you further and dive a little deeper, maybe do some programs that you have or connect with you one-on-one, how can they do that?
Yeah, the best place to go is findmycatalyst.com. Findmycatalyst.com. It's where you can find your catalyst to start thinking differently and doing differently. So go to findmycatalyst.com. You also find me on LinkedIn, Mike Simmons. I'm an OG on LinkedIn, or I actually have my name there. So you do Mike Simmons Catalyst, I should pop up, and you'll likely see stuff like this, videos of whiteboards and all of that kind of stuff. So thank you very much for having me, Rita. I really enjoyed the conversation.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much, Mike. All right, everyone. That wraps it up for today's live stream. I hope you have a great day, and we will catch you on the next one. You've been listening to Bippity Boppity Business. Like what you hear so far? Leave us a review in Apple, or listen to us anywhere you prefer listening to your podcast. Until next time, have a magical day.